rise in violent crime in Denver. And the real reality is that we were seeing a rise in violent crime before the pandemic, and the pandemic exacerbated what we were seeing and continue to see even today. I also said we must find a balance. We must find a balance between needed reforms and maintaining public safety for all our residents, because one cannot and should not come at the expense of the other. The illegal use and possession of firearms threatens that balance, exposes flaws in our justice system, and exacerbates an already challenging time for our law enforcement officers, and of course the tenuous ride and strive toward safety for everyone in our community. We know it's going to take a coordinated, multi-agency approach to get these guns and the felons who use them to reoffend off our streets. We're no strangers to working with our federal partners to solve crime in Denver, Colorado, to help stop the scourge or whatever we're trying to stop. They have been enormously helpful. So as a community, we cannot and we will not tolerate the prohibited use of guns by convicted violent felons in our city. This initiative that the Chief will be announcing in just a moment are aimed at the greatest consequences of the most serious of those offenders. And so I'm proud to be here to stand with our police chief and with our federal partners, and I applaud the Denver Police Department for leading the nation in reforms and working to expand the alternative police response options where we can in our city. Chief Pazin has been a leader and recognized national leader on these efforts, as well as creative, innovative solutions and steps toward preventing gun violence and preventing those guns from getting into the hands of violent offenders, and making sure we bring to bear the full weight of the justice system to deal with it. And so thank you, Chief, for having me, and I look forward to joining everyone and hearing what this new initiative is about.
So thank you, Mayor. It's no secret that violent crime is on the rise. Gun-related crime is on the rise in our city. We cannot become numb to this gun violence. We cannot normalize this gun violence, and the status quo is not acceptable. And that is why we are announcing this enhanced partnership in order to address individuals who are committing these violent acts in our community. We are here to announce the creation of a new investigative team that includes the ATF and a Denver police officer. This enhanced partnership will focus on violent felons who carry firearms. These are the individuals who are the most likely contributors to violence in our city. We also want to put violent felons on notice. If you choose to illegally possess or use a firearm in Denver, we will do everything within our authority to ensure you face the greatest penalties. The new investigative team will work together. They'll respond to investigations in progress and assist our officers on scene to gather that evidence and ensure that the reporting mechanism is as solid as possible. These cases will be reviewed for possession of a weapon by a previous offender, or what we refer to as PALPOs, for prosecution either by the Denver District Attorney's Office or the United States, the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Colorado. Prioritizing these cases for consideration of filing on the most serious available charges based on the connections to the shootings, whether the crime occurred in one of our hotspots, one of our 5 crime hotspots, or the likelihood of future violent activity. These efforts will complement the courageous ongoing work of our officers who are recovering illegal guns and making these types of arrests. So to date, the Denver Police Department and our officers have recovered 1,170 firearms this year. I repeat, 1,170 firearms have been taken off the streets in Denver this year. What does that mean? That's 26% increase over the 3-year baseline. Not 2021 versus a pandemic year, but against the 3-year baseline, a 26% increase in recovering these weapons that are causing the most harm to our community. Our officers have also, to date, made 415 arrests for prohibited possession of firearms, these PALPO arrests, this year alone. What does that mean? That's a 48% increase over the 3-year baseline. We cannot accept the status quo. We have to innovate. We have to look for solutions in order to keep our community safe. The Metro Denver Crime Stoppers, the ATF, and the Denver Police Department are also partnering on billboards. The sign that you see to my right will be prominently posted on billboards in our 5 hotspots. It is critical that we get our community support, that we get tips from the community to help us address illegal gun activity, to address all crime activity. And so we would encourage folks to utilize the ATF tip line as well as the very effective Crime Stoppers tip line to report this type of activity. That said, I'd like to introduce a critical partner in this, Special Agent in charge of the Denver ATF office, David Booth.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Booth. I'm the ATF agent who's the Special Agent in charge for the ATF's Denver Field Division. We have a long-standing relationship with the Denver Police Department, as well as many other organizations in the region, including Crime Stoppers. Our partnership has included such successes like NIBIN, the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, or RAVEN, which is the Regional Anti-Violence Enforcement Network. These programs would not be the successes they are without the support of the United States Attorney's Office, as well as the Denver District Attorney's Office. Today, I'm proud to join our partners to announce yet another element of this partnership, which Chief Pazin just spoke about. And the message I'd like to pass on to Denver is that, folks, this is your community, this is your police department, this is your ATF, and we're going to use everything we can at our disposal to remove these violent people from our community. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Acting United States Attorney Matt Kirsch.
Thanks, David. My name is Matt Kirsch. I am the Acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Colorado. I want to tell you all a little bit more about the partnership that everybody's been talking about today. This is really the next evolution of a targeted violent crime strategy that we've already been using in Denver and the surrounding area, and that has in fact been adopted as a nationwide model as a part of the Department of Justice's Project Safe Neighborhoods program. This strategy is not based on a sort of traditional model of simply increasing the number of federal prosecutions that we might bring. Instead, this strategy focuses federal law enforcement resources to bring federal charges against the most dangerous criminals in Denver who are operating in the most dangerous places in Denver. The strategy uses data from police reports, from gunshot location technologies, from the NIBIN technology that David Booth just referred to focus law enforcement efforts on criminals who are most likely to be possessing and using guns. What the new effort today adds into that mix is data about where the most violent crimes are occurring, as well as other on-the-ground intelligence from DPD officers and the additional investigative efforts to develop potential federal cases that you heard Chief Pazin describe. All of that is going to further focus law enforcement's efforts on the most dangerous people, those people who are using guns to commit crimes. The file review that you heard Chief Pazin described is going to occur for every felon arrested with a gun in Denver. An attorney from my office is going to do that in conjunction with an attorney from the Denver District Attorney's Office. As a result of that review, we're going to determine which office can bring charges that will best incapacitate the people who've been arrested with guns. And when federal charges are the most likely to accomplish that goal, we are not going to hesitate to vigorously pursue those charges. Let me give you just one example of the kind of case in which this strategy's worked in the past. My office recently prosecuted a person named Ryan Littlejohn Connor. Mr. Littlejohn Connor was a leader in the A-Tray Crips gang here in Denver. And he ran out into a parking lot and fired 12 shots at 2 people who he was chasing away in the middle of this crowded parking lot. He hit one of the people who he was actually shooting at in the back of the head, although did not kill him. And one of the other shots that he fired went into the middle of one of the nearby apartments. It went into the bathroom where the apartment's occupant happened to be sleeping in the bed right next to that bathroom. Through a combination of evidence, including video surveillance and shell casings that were recovered by DPD there at the scene, we were able to prosecute and convict Mr. Littlejohn Connor for being a felon in possession of ammunition, one of the federal charges that we expect to be using as a part of this initiative. And just last month, he was sentenced to serve 84 months in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So I'm really pleased on behalf of the U.S. Attorney's Office to be able to continue to work with the Denver Police Department and the ATF and all of our other federal and state law enforcement partners to continue this effort of identifying and prosecuting the most violent people in Denver that we can. Thanks.
Again, I want to thank each of you for being here, for sharing this message. We want these violent felons to know exactly what this partnership is all about, and that we are working together with the Denver District Attorney's Office, the ATF, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and Crime Stoppers in order to hold them accountable. Thank you for being here. We can open it up for a few questions. Esteban. So a little bit about the team. So we have identified an ATF agent that will be partnered with a Denver police officer. They've been working together for about 3 weeks now. They've gotten additional training on these types of issues, and they will respond if we have a shooting that occurs within our city. Patrol officers will respond to that, as well as our crime gun response team. These 2 officers, an ATF agent and a police officer, to help facilitate that investigation, right? We don't want to have the worst of the worst. This person could be identified as the worst individual with a high propensity for violence. We want to make sure that we gather all of the evidence appropriate, that the interview takes place, so we have those options of filing this either in the Denver District Attorney's Office or the U.S. Attorney's Office, again, based on the likelihood of future criminal activity and or in our 5 hotspots. So this enhanced partnership is actually providing this team, as well as providing additional training. This team is going out to each one of the districts, to the roll calls, making sure that all of our officers know and understand what it takes in order to have successful prosecution further down the road. It's an officer who's got a lot of experience, worked on a high-profile case with the ATF recently, has some great experience. The ATF agent has some great experience as well. Our officer adds a lot of value to this, and we're very proud. There was a selection process, and glad to have her on the team. Correct. That's the crime gun response team. We're partnering these folks together, and they will physically respond to these shooting calls and assist. And the one team.
Is the emphasis on repeat violent offenders committing gun crimes, or is it on people committing gun crimes in the hotspots, or both?
Both, and you heard Acting U.S. Attorney Kirsch talk about it. The worst of the worst, right? We want to make sure that these violent felons, these folks that are prohibited from possessing firearms, that are creating the most harm in our community, that they're held accountable. And we want to make sure that we have those options in order to do this. This gives us the greatest opportunity for success right at the beginning of that call. And this enhanced partnership with the DA's office, U.S. Attorneys, ATF, and then again, the community. The community lets us know what's going on. We would encourage folks to report illegal gun activity and all crimes through the ATF tip line and through our partners at Metro Denver Crime Stoppers as well.
So just to figure out what it was like before the 3 weeks ago, so would it be when there's a shooting, just a DPD officer responds?
Correct.
And now the difference is?
This enhanced team.
ATF. So before the ATF wouldn't be involved in just a shooting or response to a shooting?
So ATF, we have this great partnership with Raven, as David spoke of here, with the U.S. Attorney's Office, reviewing these cases for possible federal charges on it. This enhances that partnership. This puts that additional resource on scene at the time of the shooting that gives us the greatest opportunity for success. Even in the Denver District Attorney's Office, this gives us an opportunity to have stronger cases locally if it meets the criteria that Matt discussed, right? The worst of the worst. That's what we need to get off the streets. Violent felons that are indiscriminately pulling triggers and creating great harm within our community. We need to put them on notice that that is not going to be tolerated, that this community will not stand for that, and we are going to work collaboratively in order to address these individuals.
So will the response be to every shooting, or just the ones specifically in the hotspots, or just certain types of shootings that fit a certain category?
So we want to get the worst of the worst off the street. If that's somebody that's in the hotspot, that is great. If it's somebody that we think has high propensity for violence in the future, then we're going to, again, triage this in conjunction with the District Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office. So, Connor in the back. So, excellent question, and discussions about, and I'm going to take a step back here for a second, right? You know, you heard the mayor announce the 5 hotspots in Denver, 5 locations, relatively small geographic, make up 1.56% of our land mass, that count for 49% of our shootings and 26% of our homicides, right? The scholars, the academics, the researchers, they talk about hot spots and hot people. I don't know if this is something that you're familiar with. This gives us an opportunity to focus on those hot people, the worst of the worst, and figuring out where the most appropriate filing will take place. We did have the discussions on place-based, and we certainly will review everything to make sure that we're on solid legal ground. That's exactly why we're creating this crime gun response team, so that way every I is dotted, every T is crossed right from the beginning. And then, so I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this, but backgrounds, convictions have a big part of that as well. Julia.
Is there ever a possibility in these cases that people could face both federal and state charges?
Matt, do you want to jump on that one?
Yes. Is the short answer. Typically, DOJ has a policy that prohibits prosecution for the same conduct if a person has already been prosecuted in state court. But there are inappropriate cases, we can seek a waiver of that policy. There are some cases that are going to arise as a result of this initiative that the Denver DA's office is simply going to be better at prosecuting. If a murder happens and is provable, the Denver DA's office is going to be better at, we don't even have a federal murder statute unless it occurs, right, against a federal employee or on federal land. So that case is going to go to the Denver DA's office. There may be instances where some portion of the case might fit better in state court and some portion in the case might fit better in federal court. We'll just have to make that determination on a case-by-case basis.
And what kind of criteria might you look at to consider seeking a waiver to your policy?
In general, we have to consider, we have to look at what the federal law enforcement interest is and whether or not it has been appropriately vindicated by the state prosecution. If it hasn't, then that's what would cause us to seek a waiver. I am aware of a few other cities where the ATF works very closely with a local police department in order to try to develop cases like this. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened in other places, but I'm not aware of other locations where there is a response team that involves the ATF and a local police department like you've heard about today. We're going to measure it by figuring out whether or not we can successfully prosecute people who have been responsible for violent crimes in Denver. If we can do that, then we'll consider it a success. No, like I said, I think it's a mistake to try to focus on the number of prosecutions as opposed to focusing on the quality of the prosecutions. That's what this initiative is about.
Felons with guns. What hasn't been happening before this that make a difference in the violent crime rate? It seems like your department is doing what it is aiming to do, and yet still there's a lot of violent crime. What will this do that hasn't been done before?
So there's a lot of nuance in what we were talking about today, right? When we're explaining what this team's doing, how it's responding, the difference between the DA cases and the difference between the U.S. Attorney Office cases, this gives us, as I believe Matt said, this is the next evolution. This gives us the greatest opportunity for success going further upstream, holding people accountable before they commit these violent acts, these individuals that are prohibited from owning or possessing firearms, holding them accountable through both the Denver District Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office. We believe that this will help us reduce the shootings, reduce the homicides that have occurred within our city, and help us keep our city safe. And that's what we're focused on here. The next evolution, doing something that's innovative, not accepting the status quo, not becoming numb or tolerating violence within our community. And we're very excited that we have this type of partnership to give us the opportunity to keep our city safe. And part of it is the messaging. We want these violent felons to know that this team is working together to hold them accountable. So thank you.
Can you just comment on, there have been a lot of shootings in Lodo and like near the 16th Street Mall in July. I mean, what's causing that? What's leading to that uptick? Is it gang related?
So this will be the last question. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be respectful of our partners' times. We analyze each one of these cases. Major Crimes does deep dives. We look at solvability. We look at cases that are solved and look for those underlying causal factors. What we are seeing this year that is unique to years past is of the 5 most recent homicides, 4 of which there was a nexus to narcotics, dealing, some sort of transaction there. The previous 10, 5 or 6 of those, there was a direct nexus to narcotics. Typically, 2020, for example, the number one causal factor was some sort of dispute, some sort of disagreement that escalated into a shooting. This year, 2021, we're seeing an increase with that narcotics nexus. So we're focused on that. We are aware of it. We've made some changes to some of the staffing down in these areas, and we'll continue to evaluate it. But we also think that this initiative, partnering together with the ATF, partnering together with both the District Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office to hold the worst of the worst accountable will help us start to mitigate this violence and start to reduce the violence in our city in all areas, the 5 hotspots, as well as anywhere that this takes place. So thank you all again for spreading the word on this very important initiative. We appreciate it.